Hello, I'm Tom Season, and this is Maslin Magazine. I'm here today with attorney Jeffrey Jakmides, who's the Republican candidate for Stark County Prosecutor in this November's election. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you.
I know that you're from the Alliance area, and for many of us residents here in Western Stark County, that's kind of like foreign territory. But I do know that the Alliance area has really given us many top-notch political office holders, for example, Dixie Park and Alex Zumbar, who are elected county people. So the first thing I would like for you to do is just to tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, family, what you like to do, just whatever you want people to know.
I grew up in Canton, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Glenwood High School there, and that's my Maslin Tiger connection. My football coach at Glenwood was Jim Reichenbaugh.
Okay.
He was the first Maslin Tiger I ever met, and if people, I'm sure, remember Coach Reichenbaugh, he played here for Paul Brown and then went to Ohio State and played for Woody Hayes. Coach Reichenbaugh was a big influence on me, and I think every player that ever played for Coach Reichenbaugh would tell you that, and I know Dan Deerdorf was one of our teammates, and he said he was afraid of Coach Reichenbaugh, and Dan was about a 250-pound tackle at the time, which was big in those days. But Coach Reichenbaugh had a good influence on me. He was very demanding of his players. He demanded a certain level of conduct, he demanded a certain appearance, and he demanded a certain level of excellence. And Coach Reichenbaugh was a good influence for a lot of us because we mostly had never run into somebody quite as demanding and tough a guy as Jim Reichenbaugh was. So that was a real awakening experience for me, and I played for Jim Reichenbaugh for my sophomore, junior, and senior years. I was his quarterback my senior year and started for him as a junior as well on defense. And so that's the first Maslin Tiger I ever met, and it was quite an experience to play for somebody like Jim Reichenbaugh. I stayed in touch with him after I graduated, and when he passed away, and I've talked to his wife since then, but I always let her know that, hey, Jim Reichenbaugh was sure a good influence on me at a time when, there wasn't a lot of people making demands of me, but he sure did, and it was certainly for my benefit. But I grew up in Canton. I went to Mount Union College, again, to play football. Essentially, I wasn't much of a student at the time. And I graduated from there and got my first job as a probation officer. And I worked in that court for 7 years as a probation officer, and during that period of time I went to graduate school at Kent State University and got a master's degree in corrections, which is essentially criminology and criminal justice and diversion, drug treatment, alcohol treatment, the different problems affecting the criminal justice system. I have a graduate education and got my master's degree in 1977. After that, I went to law school. Now, I'm working as a probation officer and going to school at night. And then I started law school, again, going to night school at the University of Akron School of Law. And during that period of time, I worked at the Stark County Public Defender's Office as the chief investigator, which is essentially an investigator, go out in the street, find witnesses, interview witnesses, get subpoenas served on people that were witnesses for the defendant in the case. And I worked with a great bunch of lawyers there and learned quite a bit about that, and then eventually got my law degree. Then I went to work for my first boss, the late Judge John A. Thomas. He had decided not to run again for judge and opened a practice and invited me to join him, and I was very happy and flattered to work for Judge Thomas, who I regard as a great man. And I worked for Judge Thomas, but unfortunately he was killed in a tragic automobile accident after I'd only been with him for 1 year. So there I was, 32 years old, with a bachelor's degree from Mount Union, a master's degree from Kent State, a law degree from the University of Akron. I'd been a probation officer, a chief investigator, a lawyer, and there I was. I had no money. I had no clients. My boss and best friend had been killed in an accident. People were coming in, they wanted their files, they wanted their money back, because John had been their lawyer and I worked for him. So this was really a nightmarish experience for me because, most first-year lawyers don't really know much, and I had always wanted to be a tax lawyer. That's what I really enjoyed in law school. So there I was, and I'm thinking, so I ended up buying a building in downtown Alliance, and I lived in the back of that building. And it was a one-room, no windows, me, my phone, my TV, my bed, my dresser. And I lived back there and started a practice out of a back of a building in downtown Alliance. And it was quite a long, hard slog, when and I like to, people say, well, you start out with nothing. I said, no, I didn't. I started out with a lot less than nothing. I had borrowed the money to buy the building. And, young lawyer, you don't have any clientele. And I wanted to be a tax lawyer. Well, I am still waiting for my first tax client to come in the door. But I did have clients come in, mostly people that I had been their probation officer, or I had met them in the course of my work as the chief investigator for the public defender, and they hired me. Now, there was one thing I could do, and that was try a jury trial. And so that's what I did. And I've tried probably 500 jury trials by now, but I tried cases and I won. And slowly but surely, I became a criminal defense lawyer because that's who came through the door and hired me and paid the bills. I've been very blessed to have great secretaries in my career. I've had, I think, only 3 in my long career, and a good secretary is worth their weight in gold, and I've been very blessed to have really good secretaries. And, I slowly but surely, build a practice. I probably do more family law than anything at this point. Take custody from heroin addicts for grandparents, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, even non-relatives. I've done quite a lot of that in the last 5 years. But the clerk of court's office checked, and they found that from 1993 to the present day, I've been hired by more people in Stark County to do different types of criminal and civil cases than any other lawyer in Stark County. So I kind of kid my friends and say, look, I am number one. I can prove it. So I've been successful, and I owe a lot of people credit for that. I met my wife Jane over there in Alliance. She was a waitress at Heggy's, and we've been married since it's 34 years now. 4 children. My son John, my oldest son John Thomas, who I named after my first boss, Judge Thomas, is a lawyer in Columbus. My other son Jeffrey is a track coach at Walsh and a physical therapist assistant. My daughter Julie is in law school, and she's also a city councilwoman in Alliance. She was only 19 when she said, Dad, I want to run for city council. I said, well, go for it, Julie. And so she did, and she ran at large, so the top 3 out of 6, and she got the most votes. A fact I never let Chief Doherty live down over there. I said, she got more votes than you, Chief, But at any rate, and then my other daughter, Janie's at home with us, and she's a student at Stark State. So, and we have a dog, Ozzy. And so I've been very lucky. I give my wife credit for our wonderful children, I've been successful, and I will continue to be successful. I know that, regardless of what happens here. I'm going to try very hard to win this race, and I think I will win. I was encouraged to run for this office by people I respect a lot: Janet Creighton, Alan Harold, some others. In law enforcement, and they said, it has to be somebody that can afford to do this, okay, that can afford to do it, and somebody that's got the name recognition, and somebody that's got the experience. And so that's what brings me to run for Stark County Prosecutor.
It's quite a story of your life and your career. When I was superintendent at Stark MRDD, I had a lot of experience working with the county prosecutor's office because they were our official legal counsel, even though we did hire some attorneys on the side. So just let us know, what are the duties of the county prosecutor? What does his or her office do?
Well, the county prosecutor's office is there to help represent the public officials and public agencies that request their assistance. Now, what we have seen a lot more now, especially in the last 10 or 12 years, is that these offices have their own legal counsel within their offices. And I'm sure they have that, so they have somebody they can immediately go to with questions and someone to somewhat sometimes deflect the complainers away from them. I was the legal counsel for Lexington Township Board of Trustees for 10 years, for Nimishillen Township for 5 or 6 years, and for Smith Township in Mahoning County. So I know about the county prosecutor's role in representing township trustees and boards of township trustees because I attended probably 1,000 of those meetings over a 10 or 12 year period. And that's an important part of the county prosecutor's office. Now, I don't pretend that every county prosecutor is good at everything. What I believe I'm particularly good at is the criminal end of this. Like I say, I've been a probation officer, I've been an investigator for the public defender, and I've been an assistant county prosecutor. I left out of my story that after I'd been a lawyer for 2 years, Judge Unger, who was at that time the Stark County prosecutor, asked me to come and work in his office, and I was flattered to do that. I'd only been a lawyer a brief period of time, but by then I had won quite a number of jury trials. And so I caught his attention, and I worked for him and prosecuted drug cases, homicide cases, robbery cases, sex offense cases. And then when he left office, my commitment was to him, and I told Mr. Horowitz I'd like to go back out into private practice. But I did stay on about 6 months with Mr. Horowitz to complete some cases that were coming up. There was an arson case and a few major drug trafficking cases that, frankly, I told Bob, look, these are complicated, difficult cases, and just to throw someone new onto these at this point, right before trial, is probably not advisable. So he was gracious enough to say, Jeff, you stay and you finish your cases. So I have a lot of varied experience, including the end of representing boards of trustees. But I don't pretend to be an expert in everything, and obviously part of what a county prosecutor does is they put people in a position to give advice to MRDD that have some expertise in that particular area of the law. But it's a big job, but I believe the problem we have is heroin. That is the major law enforcement problem that we have. And frankly, there has never been anybody better equipped to deal with that than myself. And John Ferraro even conceded that when we had a debate. He said, obviously, Jeff is more experienced in this and has more knowledge and expertise than I do. Now, he said it in kind of a sarcastic way, because I have represented major drug dealers, and I have represented people with heroin problems and people with possession cases. So I know the system from that end, as well as when I was an assistant county prosecutor for Judge Unger. So I have both sides of experience there. I have the treatment experience from probation and my master's degree in corrections. And I know what to do with that and how to attack it. And I think that's got to be the personal job of the county prosecutor. You can't pass the buck on that. It's got to be your responsibility. And I'm going to make it my responsibility, and I want to be judged on how successful I am dealing with that particular problem. I've represented people in federal court for these offenses. I know how the FBI and the DEA and the U.S. attorneys work with these. I know how the county prosecutors work with these, not only in this county but in other counties. And I know the treatment system very well. There isn't any private attorney that sent more people to drug and alcohol treatment than I have in my 40 years, because I started out doing that, and I know the resources that are available out there. And frankly, I may be a little more tough on people about that. I don't believe in excuses. I believe that you have responsibility to do what you're doing, and you don't make excuses for it. But I also think that we shouldn't start out the conversations with people that get caught with heroin, oh, poor you. I think we should start out the conversations with, where do you get your dope? These are the people that are selling this poison, and we need to know who they are, and you need to assist law enforcement in this. And it's a great urban myth that snitches get stitches. That's a bunch of crap. That does not happen. Frankly, everybody prosecuted in the federal system eventually tells on everybody else that they're prosecuted with. That's part of how it works. And they don't get retaliated against. So I think that's an urban myth out there. And I think we have to get out of this idea that there's something wrong with telling on drug dealers. We need to go in the community and say, this is a good thing. This is community service at its highest level. You need to help law enforcement with this. And I think I can have an impact on that. Well, frankly, I know I can, because I have in the past.
Okay, you hit upon one issue, and that's heroin, and we all know that that's a major issue in the county. What are some of the other issues that face us as residents of Stark County?
Well, we waste a lot of money in the operation of our criminal justice system because we don't have a direct indictment, early diversion, bill of information program. Every other major county in the state of Ohio has an up and running direct indictment program that's been up and running for over 10 years. If you look in the Canton Repository back to 2002, you will see John Ferraro talking about doing a direct indictment program. He says a couple years that how he saved money doing direct indictments. Well, here we are 14 years later, and we still don't have anything close to a good direct indictment program. Now, it's a complicated thing to try and get across to people in a few minutes, but essentially it's a screening process. You screen cases, you have police detectives screen cases with a prosecutor, and you screen them quickly, identify the 20% of the very bad guys, get them indicted quickly and to the felony judge that's going to handle their case quickly. Akron does it within 7 days. It takes us 6 weeks. And you also identify the 80% of the cases where the people are very, very unlikely to go to prison. They may need drug treatment, alcohol treatment, mental health treatment, honor court, drug court. We have all these diversion programs, and we have probation services to deal with that nonviolent 80%. And they get screened quickly too. Get to the treatment right away. Get to probation services quickly. This saves the taxpayers a lot of money. In Akron, they estimate $2 million a year. I would estimate it would save the criminal justice system of Stark County $1 million a year. And if you look, you will see year after year, judges and clerk of courts have raised this issue. Why don't we have direct indictments? Why don't we do it like Akron and Cleveland and Franklin County and Hamilton County? Why don't we do this? Everybody else does. Well, the answer is because John Ferraro hasn't done it. He's talked about it for 14 years. He has not done it. I know how to do that because I've worked in these courts. And it can be done. It is not that hard and complicated a thing to do. And it'll save the taxpayers a lot of money. Part of the problem is we have this infighting among the Democrats. They have these party factions within the Democratic Party, and they don't cooperate with each other. We have the prosecutor suing the sheriff, and the sheriff fires the lawyer out there who was working for Ferraro. I don't care about all that. The clerk's office in Massillon and don't have good relations with the prosecutor's office. The clerk in Canton is the Democratic county chairman, so he's kind of in the middle. But I'm just telling you, all that has nothing to do with saving the taxpayers' money, but it prevents this thing from happening. It just does, and it's ridiculous, frankly. It's ridiculous. And it costs the taxpayers a lot of money they shouldn't be spending. And there's no reason in the world why we can't do what every other county around us has been doing for 10 years.
Okay, two big issues you hit on. So what are your plans? What ideas do you have to meet these challenges head on, to resolve the issues that we're...
Well, the heroin thing, I'm going to be in the police departments working with the police. I'll bet you won't find a police officer that's seen our county prosecutor in their police department. You will see me. They will see me, they will know me, and they know they'll know that I'm there. I will be in the courtrooms prosecuting these cases personally. You won't see, John Ferraro, I don't think has ever tried a jury trial. He's been there, 13 years? And I don't believe he's ever walked in a courtroom and prosecuted someone to a conclusion. I was telling someone I've prosecuted more cases to a jury verdict in the last 30 years than he has, and I haven't tried one in 30 years. As a prosecutor, I've tried a lot as defense attorney, of course. But anyway, I intend to personally be in the police departments, be in the courtrooms, and personally take this on. You know, obviously, when you're the most hired lawyer in Stark County, you don't really have to do this financially, but I can afford to do it, and I want to do it. And I know how to do it, and I can take this on. And I want to be judged by how successful I am, and I think that's what John Ferraro ought to be doing. This is the biggest problem we have. There's no question about it. No question about it. It's the biggest problem we have. And, his response is, well, he sends a letter to Board of Elections, says, I'm going to retire. I intend to retire. Well, you don't hire somebody to do a tough job that intends to retire, You hire somebody that wants to do it and has some passion for it and some credibility. And I have those things. So I'm going to take it on, win, lose, or draw. We are going to have a street fight over it, and we'll see what happens, but I'll be judged by how successful or not. And I'll take that responsibility. Because I think the county prosecutor has to do it. He's in the best position to do it. And it can have more of an impact than anyone else in the criminal justice system.
At the beginning of this session, I had asked you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your career, and what makes you the best candidate for this job? I mean, you've already hit upon a couple things, but what makes you the most qualified? Why do you feel you're the most qualified for this position?
Well, I have a broad experience. I've been a probation officer. I've worked at the public defender's office. I've been an assistant county prosecutor. I've been a defense attorney. I even had a short stint as an acting judge, which was long enough for me to decide that that is not for me. Some people have patience to do that job and some don't, and I'm in the don't category. So I have a very broad experience within the criminal justice system. And I've worked with social service agencies, getting people help, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, the Chance program. I've seen both sides of this, from both sides, not from an office in the 5th floor, but from the courtroom and in the police department and with the actual face-to-face people. Also, I have a broad experience in family court and the juvenile court. People don't talk much about the juvenile court when they talk about the prosecutor's office, but that's a very important part of that job. In fact, the focus of my graduate education in corrections at Kent State was juvenile delinquency, the causes of juvenile delinquency. And that's a very important part of the prosecutor's office. And, frankly, I work there every day, and I know how to do those cases as well. So I've been taking custody away from junkies for probably, especially the last 5 years. And I mean, I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say I've probably got custody of 50 children for various relatives because the parents were on heroin. So I've seen this close up. I see the children, it's affected them. I've helped those families, helped these children. I know what the face of this evil is. And, that's a very rare experience to have. But it's because people have walked in my door and hired me to do it. So you don't get that experience just wanting to have it. You've got to have people come in and say, my grandchildren are in danger because they're with heroin addicts. I need you to get them for me. You came to the right guy, ma'am. I know junkies. I know dope. I know what to do. And that's probably the best part of my job, actually, that I've enjoyed the most.
So what have we missed? What do you want to add to this?
I think that I have the passion for the job. I'm a Stark County guy. I'm a Canton guy. And I've been, I love this community. I mean, it's been great to me. Look, hey, I came, like my wife says, Jeff, we weren't just broke. When we finally were flat broke, we said, hallelujah, we're flat broke now. So I know what it is to come out of this community with nothing and be able to build yourself slowly to a success. Raise my children here. I don't know, I guess in a way I feel like I kind of owe the community something because I can afford to do this. And not everybody can. And that's why, you don't see people run for office sometimes. It's like, hey, they have to think about their family first and maybe perhaps be a little selfish. Well, at this point I can afford not to be, and I want to do it. And, when people are hiring somebody for a job, they should think, do I want to hire a guy that's already wrote a letter saying I intend to retire, and doesn't talk about heroin at all, or do they want to hire a guy that has a passion for it and wants to take it on? And frankly, nobody can match my experience in the criminal justice system. There just isn't anybody that can and is willing to spend it, on the people of this county. And I hope to have a positive impact, and I think I will, or I wouldn't be doing this.
Well, you've given us some very interesting information, and it's my hope that this interview will allow our listeners and viewers to get to know you a little bit better, get a little bit more insight as who Jeff Jakmides is, and that come election time they'll be able to make an informed choice. And I really thank you for taking your time.
Well, thanks for having me.
Letting us get to know you a little bit better. Thank
you.
And
it's good to be back in Massillon. And like I say, one of the biggest influences of my life was a Massillon Tiger named Jim Reichenbaugh. And any guy that ever played for Coach Reichenbaugh will tell you that he at the time you were scared of him and afraid of him, and sometimes you hated the guy, but in the long haul, when you look back and say he made demands of me, he made me do things that I didn't think I could do. He made me, as a high school student, look forward and not back. And I've always appreciated that about him. So when I'm here in Massillon, I always think of Jim Reichenbaugh.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.